Justinian's wife, I shall now describe how she was brought up, how she married him, and how, in conjunction with him, she utterly ruined the Roman Empire. As soon as she reached the age of puberty, as she was handsome, her mother sent her into the theatrical troupe, and she straightway became a simple harlot, as old-fashioned people called it. For she was neither a musician nor a dancer, but merely prostituted herself to everyone whom she met, giving up every part of her body to debauchery. She associated chiefly with the theatrical pantomimes, and took part in their performances, playing in comic scenes, for she was exceedingly witty and amusing, so that she soon became well known by her acting. Theodora was at this time handsome and of a graceful figure, but she was short, without much colour, but rather of a pale complexion, and with brilliant and piercing eyes. She remained for some time also in a brothel. She satisfied the unnatural passions of certain wretches, even the vilest slaves, who followed their masters to the theatre and amused their leisure by this infamy. It would take a lifetime to tell of all her adventures during her theatrical life, but I think what little I have selected above will be sufficient to give an indication of her character. She had no shame whatever, and no one ever saw her put out of countenance, but she lent herself to scandalous purposes without the least hesitation. She excelled in raising a laugh by being slapped on her puffed-out cheeks, and used to uncover herself so far as to show the spectators everything before and behind which decency forbids to be shown to men. She stimulated her lovers by lascivious jests, and continually invented new postures of coition, by which means she completely won the hearts of all libertines. For she did not wait to be solicited by anyone whom she met, but herself, with joke and gestures, invited everyone whom she fell in with, especially beardless boys. She never succumbed to these transports, for she often went to a supper at which each one paid his share with 10 or more young men in the full vigour of their age and practised in debauchery, and would pass the whole night with all of them. When they were all exhausted, she would go to their servants, 30 in number it may be, and fornicate with each one of them. And yet not even so did she quench her lust. Once she went to the house of some great man, and while the guests were drinking, pulled up her clothes on the edge of the couch, and did not blush to exhibit her wantonness without reserve. Though she received the male in 3 orifices, she nevertheless complained of nature for not having made the passage of her breasts wider, that she might contrive a new form of coition in that part of her person also. She frequently became pregnant, but as she employed all known remedies without delay, she promptly procured abortion. Often, even on the stage, she stripped before the eyes of all the people and stood naked in their midst, wearing only a girdle about her private parts and groin. Not because she had any modesty about showing that also to the people, but because no one was allowed to go on the stage without a girdle about those parts. In this attitude, she would throw herself down on the floor and lie on her back. Slaves, whose duty it was, would then pour grains of barley upon her girdle, which trained geese would then pick up with their beaks, one by one, and eat. She did not blush or rise up, but appeared to glory in this performance. For she was not only without shame, but especially fond of encouraging others to be shameless, and often would strip naked in the midst of the actors and swing herself backwards and forwards, explaining to those who had already enjoyed her and those who had not the peculiar excellencies of that exercise. She proceeded to such extremities of abuse as to make her face become what most women's private parts are, wherefore her lovers became known at once by their unnatural tastes, and any respectable man who met her in the public streets turned away and made haste to avoid her, lest his clothes should be soiled by contact with such an abandoned creature, for she was a bird of ill omen, especially for those who saw her early in the day. As for her fellow actresses, she always abused them most savagely, for she was exceedingly jealous. Afterwards, she accompanied Hecabolus, who had received the appointment of governor of Pentapolis, to that country to serve his basest passions, but quarrelled with him and was straightway sent out of the country. In consequence of this, she fell into want of common necessaries, with which she hereafter provided herself by prostitution, as she had been accustomed to do. She first went to Alexandria, and afterwards wandered all through the east until she reached Byzantium, plying her trade in every city on her way, a trade which, I imagine, heaven will not pardon the man for calling by its right name, as if the powers of evil would not allow any place on earth to be free from the debaucheries of Theodora. Such was the birth and such the training of this woman, and her name became better known than that of any other prostitute of her time. On her return to Byzantium, Justinian became excessively enamored of her. At first, he had intercourse with her merely as her lover, although he raised her to the position of a patrician. By this means, Theodora was straightway enabled to gain very great influence and to amass considerable sums of money. He charmed Justinian beyond all the world, and like most infatuated lovers, he delighted to show her all the favor and give her all the money that he could. This lavishness added fuel to the flame of passion. He then resolved to bring about his marriage with Theodora. It was forbidden by the most ancient laws of the state that anyone of the senatorial order should marry a courtesan, so he prevailed to repeal the existing law and introduce a new one, whereby he was allowed to live with Theodora as his legitimate wife, and it became possible for anyone else to marry a courtesan. In concert with her, he plundered the people more than ever, not only in the capital, but throughout the Roman Empire. While still on the stage, she became with child by one of her friends, but did not perceive her misfortune until it was too late. She tried all the means she had formerly employed to procure abortion, but she was unable prematurely to destroy the living creature by any means whatsoever, since it had nearly assumed the form of a human being. Therefore, finding her remedies unsuccessful, she abandoned the attempt and was obliged to bring forth the child. Its father, seeing that Theodora was at a loss what to do, and was indignant because, now that she had become a mother, she was no longer able to traffic with her person as before, and being with good reason in fear for the child's life, took it up, named it John, and carried it away with him to Arabia, whither he had resolved to retire. The father, just before his death, gave John, who was now grown up, full information concerning his mother. John, having performed the last offices for his dead father, some time afterwards repaired to Byzantium, and explained the state of affairs to those who were charged with the duty of arranging admission to an audience with the Empress. They, not suspecting that she would conceive any inhuman designs against him, announced to the mother the arrival of her son. She, fearing that the report might reach the ears of the emperor, ordered her son to be brought to her. When she saw him approaching, she went to meet him and handed him over to one of her confidants, whom she always entrusted with commissions of this kind. In what manner the unfortunate youth disappeared, I cannot say. He has never been seen to this day, not even after his mother's death,